Are we good to go?
Welcome. Yeah, we're good.
Ah,
Welcome everybody to I guess the relaunch of the WITI Web3 community, right? And we're excited, Nandika, to have you on and one of our leaders for this, because just the journey you've been on, which we'll get into, coming through payments and into Web3, AI. So right, so but anyway, give us a quick minute on your background and where you're coming from that brought you here today.
yeah, certainly. Certainly, Dave. So, hey everybody. My name is Nandika, joining here from Ventura, California. My journey in tech has mostly been in payments. So ever since I moved to the US, I have worked in various, fintech companies. Since getting my bachelor's degree, I went to school here in uh, 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 California State University of Northridge, or known as CSUN. I studied quantitative finance there. Throughout that time, always involved in finance, working around, various different payment systems and how these things power the economy has always been a curiosity of mine, and how the economic systems work. Um, and how it is important for community to hold community together. And then moving on, fast forward about 10 years, I started my journey into exploring into blockchain technology, which I saw being in finance, which I saw was going to be a clear disruptor for the game. I saw how much leverage banking systems had over people, and it was completely unnecessary. And it was, I think people are grown up enough to custody their own assets and wealth, especially in a digital age. So these were like, kind of the thoughts that I had that kind of pushed me into the path of, I need to study this stuff. This is going to shake things up. I need to study this. I need to be ahead of the curve. And I embarked on a journey of getting my first master's from University of Nicosia uh, in blockchain and digital currency. Completed that. While I was doing that, I received a scholarship to study at Frankfurt School in Germany, which is part of there's connective tissue to BaFin, which is the SEC of Germany. Um, European Parliament. So these guys do like a lot of regulatory stuff, which was like, hey, it's a digital age, digital assets are coming. So started my second master's there, almost done with it, completing my thesis in a few weeks. Yeah, so that is my blockchain journey. My AI journey, something I just randomly kind of fell into. I work at a tech company right now. We are in the social media space. And as the tech wave started building up, it was a clear path for us to invest in AI and allow our users to interact with AI. And we were one of the first companies to build on OpenAI's API. And long story short, in our platform, the name of the app is Send It. It's one of the largest apps created on Snap SDK. When I say the SDK in their ecosystem, those little apps that you kind of snap a filter. We were one of the first people to create filters on there. And yeah, now you can do that with AI and have a really fun experience on our platform because of AI. And it's constantly evolving. So it's I mean, literally, yesterday we learned that Llama 3.1 got released. Right away we switched over most of our stuff in the back end to Llama 3.1, and it's a game-changing experience almost every other month for our people. So yeah, that's my story.
Excellent. So as far as, certainly we've seen And I think you and I have gone back and forth on this. As far as if we look at the when the PCs came out in the mid 80s through the PC software age and then the web browser, right? And then the growth of the internet, we'll call that maybe 93 through the peak of the .com, which was 2000, 2001.
Sure.
Then the crash, then, now, none of us can live without our internet. As far as Web3 terms, where would you say we are in that timeline?
But I think we are certainly still in the 90s era. 95. Amazon is barely getting formed. Amazon is barely starting to sell books to kind of give you like a metaphorical terms of where the timeline is. But with Web3 has been through a lot. It has been a rough patch for sure. I mean, this is technically this is the third bull run that we are in. And it's also not even a full cycle. It's been cut in a half. Anyone kind of following the markets would kind of see that. But Web3 has been through, pulled through the hardest times you can ever imagine. It was much easier and simpler for other technologies. I mean, as you say, in 2010, then a couple of years ago, again in 2020, the massive crashes. It's kind of a miracle that this survived through all of that.
Right. So then hopefully we're seeing the flattening out now. And you say 95. Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with that. Um, where are we heading and why do you feel we've had talks about this as far as the convergence of AI and blockchain, right? And cryptocurrency, right? I think that does, as Kerry mentioned, make it unique. Although we could even say back then in 95, like most people would not trust the internet to put their credit card in, right? That
Yeah.
probably didn't happen until 97 or 98.
Honestly, that
Cryptocurrency,
wasn't even until like 2010 when e-commerce really, right? Like nobody was using their credit card that early. And to Nadika's point, like that is where we are, like in that respect of it. It's still very clunky and people don't trust it. But there is this weird dynamic of like, how do smart contracts, NFTs, blockchain technology for the audit trails work? And then this whole concept of that it is fintech and the cryptocurrency of it all, and that we have a struggle of branding identity for what Web3 is and who those people are and what people are doing. The technology is sound, but the community is unidentified.
no, great point, right? I think that yeah, rebranding Web3, what is it? And I kind of coming from the software industry and working Silicon Valley back then, Kerry, like you said, like, I probably used credit cards. I think probably 97, I didn't have a problem doing it. Bill, what
Yeah, you were
about
an early adopter, right? You were one
yeah,
of the early
totally,
ones.
totally, right?
Hmm.
So I was in my bubble, and meanwhile, half the earth, but I'm thinking, oh, everybody, really, even like AI, which we're kind of in our AI bubbles. Maybe that's a little wider, but still, I live in a semi-small town. A lot of people don't know what ChatGPT is still, even though I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know. I mean, I would have to guess that most of the people on this call are early adopters. And so for
yeah,
us, it's like, if we looked at the trends, we were somewhere between like 3, 5, 10 years early, right? Before people started like really jumping on the bandwagon because the majority of people, they don't get it. So they don't want to have to understand how it works in order to use it. It has to be really frictionless to use,
yeah,
right?
totally. No, that's great, right? So Kerry brings up the
Yeah.
timeline, right? Because we could say 95, and then it didn't really, the top of the .com was, maybe 2000, 2001, and then certainly in the 2000s, but now we're moving at AI speed. Back then we were working at internet speed, which, we thought was fast, but it's like nothing compared to today.
We were working at
Yeah.
fax speed, actually.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, still there are certain parts of the world that does not have access to. I mean, let's start banking. The Web3 movement and the idea of building Web3 community has, there are many sort of forces behind this wave, and it's a massive force. It's about banking the bankless, or banking the unbanked, in a way. In Germany, I mean, first lived experience, I've heard of people, hey, no, I don't believe in credit cards. I don't have credit cards. And they don't buy cars on financing. They're like, oh, everything is cash. I respect that, but just it's nice, it's kind of like this massive long stem rollout model for credit cards. Um, like from the idea of inception, Americans like adopted it almost right away, and we just like went with it. And in certain parts of the world, it's still like, oh, yeah, I'm not sure about this. And also with credit cards, to Carrie's point, like, there are two universes in the credit card world, right? There's card present and card not present, or CNP. Card not present is when you use the credit card on the internet. That's a game changer. That's the risk that we are discussing. There's not much risk when you swipe a credit card to the entire. I mean, I'm not sure if we should take the conversation all the way down the rabbit hole of like dissecting risk in e-commerce or credit card processing. But certainly we know that the internet, using the credit card on the internet, is much more riskier than taking it to the grocery store and swiping it there. Most of the theft happens on the internet. So, these are things that Web3 is going to come and disrupt. Again, the native properties of Web3, as, the Web3 being powered by blockchain technology and having a transparent, immutable ledger on the internet that you can go and search for your wallet and go through that whole journey of tracing. Oh, I paid this wallet did a transaction with this one. This is the entire history of it. And also, I mean, you can even see how much assets each wallet carries. It's a level of transparency that, oh my God, you can literally see under my dress in a way. So,
That's what always made me laugh about people and their lean into being anonymous. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's like literally the opposite of what this is all for.
Here, everyone sees everything. I mean, like, yeah, I've told people, hey, dude, you shouldn't you just openly share your wallet address because I can see everything that you have, right? Like maybe not on the. I mean, I certainly have tools, so just yeah, yeah. It's like it's game theory perspective of this. Dave, we've had this conversation many times. When I can see your cards, if it is a poker game of economy, like then you are incentivized because I know that you can make this game, or you can play this hand. When I know that, we behave differently. When I know exactly what leverage you have over me, or whatever the case, whatever the assets you have, everybody's looking into it. So there's so many checks and balances in Web3 that it's just going to be such a trustless environment. Just, people are going to behave, oh, everyone can see what I do. So I better be in best behavior. So, yeah.
Right, but you can have multiple wallets, right?
Still, multiple wallets you can have an abundant. I mean, it's almost infinite number of wallets that you can create in a blockchain. I forgot exactly what, there's a number. It's in the billions, hundreds of billions. So,
all right, but even all of the top, right? A lot of the things while you're talking, Nandika, about, assuming everybody knows what you're talking about, wallets, right? Because I think we want to, as far as supporting WITI members, help them through the whole journey, right? Because I think that's where it's like, a lot of the Web3, oh, and even the credit not percentage or whatever, these are terms I think most people don't understand, and we've got to kind of, I don't want to say dummy it down a little bit, but just, right? Because we're used to things. Like when I was showing my uncle first the web, why don't I have my remote control? And why can't I just turn it on? And why doesn't it work? Right? I didn't
Yeah,
have
why
a
do I
good.
need Netflix, right? Yeah.
Right. So I think until we get there for Web3, right? Because, certainly I can go on and use my Coinbase account, or even now
Yeah,
on App and PayPal, be able to buy Bitcoin, be able to accept Bitcoin for payments. That's much newer. Other crypto
100%.
and
Yeah.
altcoins, right? So that's kind of coming. But just for the
Yes.
average person that's used to cash or credit cards,
Yeah.
check, I still
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we're right. Some of the, I mean,
It has to be as easy as your credit card though, and it's not yet, right? It has to be
It
as
will
simple
be.
as it will be. It definitely will
Yeah.
be, but it's not there yet. And it's not Web3. It's there's this place of just technology, right? And it's that development which has been happening much longer than, people discuss. And it will just take some time because it is a global implementation that will end up making it, right? It's a different network. We now run on a www, and this is something different that we're going to need, that's going to have to give us the same ease and access to use. Like, just it's going to have to be as simple as me using my online banking app, right? Because it's so
Yeah.
easy. And it just doesn't exist yet. For It was making a huge movement. Things were moving really fast during the pandemic. And I think maybe because of the cryptocurrency and so many bull runs and so much instability and coming back from the pandemic, it just slowed down, you know? And
So
AI has taken its bubble place.
yeah, so totally. There has been significant sort of investment and companies working on building, improving UI to blockchain. That has been the friction point at this point. And a lot of like e-commerce merchants. I mean, Bill may have a comment on this. I think he raised his hand. But that has been the friction point, incorporate, like, how do we make it easier for people to interact with the blockchain, which is going to change soon. Coinbase has an amazing, incredible wallet implementation, consensus, and now Uniswap. So, yeah.
Bill, what are your thoughts? I know you were right there at the beginning.
Yeah, and and it took a while to evangelize. I mean, we were the ones who were out evangelizing the internet itself, okay, back in the early days. So, I've had the luxury of seeing things kind of along. But then along comes Web3. So I hope that nobody here is going to be defended. But personally, I don't know what the fuck Web3 is.
We'll open that up,
Everybody
Bill.
throws the term out, oh, Web3 too, the next big deal. There is no such thing as, can you go out and buy Web3? Web3? Is there a website that I can go to, that I can download Web3? Web3. All Web3 is a hodgepodge of different technologies. Let's throw blockchain in there. Let's throw something else in there, and then we'll all call it Web3. And the only people that will know about what Web3 is, and even have a meaningful conversation like here, are the people on this the people in this meeting. Okay. And I'll personally, if you ask me to define what Web3 is, I'd have a hard time telling, oh, well, yeah, it's going to bring its security. They're going to bring blockchain. And people in their minds have already abandoned blockchain thinking. Okay. I'm not talking about the geeks in the room and the things that you have to build to make it safe. And blockchain can be blockchain can be a tool for that. And it's good to have contracts and all of those kind of things. But all of these things are all of these things are just separate features in that. I don't see that there's any kind of unifying thing called Web3. When are you going to switch your business over to Web3? There isn't a company on the planet that has got a plan to move their company and their infrastructure into something called Web3. And so along comes AI, and who's spending any time trying to learn more about cryptocurrencies anymore? Because the people, I don't know, the people that already know, and they have invested it, and they've moved off to the islands, for tax advantages, and they all know, the ins and outs of the, and what percentage of that, that's like 1% of 1% of all the geeks in the world that even own one. And so I guess I'm just thinking that where are we really going? What are the functional things that are going to start changing and appearing in things, and not try to figure it out, and I'm wondering if, I mean, is Web3 a thing? Is it real? And is anybody spending any money on it?
Yes.
No, I'm trying to understand this, and I've been in the business.
I would argue Web3 is not like the thing, right? Blockchain technology, smart contracts, the technology is the thing, right? But this brand of Web3 is a bunch of like the influencers who are in the space, who are like running projects and doing things, and they like hooked onto that as a mission statement of like changing the future. But it doesn't have anything sustainable behind it, other than the technology, but that is progressing without them. The quote unquote Web3 space is not necessarily pushing the technology. The technology is moving on its own because of demand, and because it is such a good audit trail, right? It makes sense for globalization. It makes sense for having what we want, but it's not Web3,
People are building Web3.
It's a feature. And I don't know. To me, it's you said it's a brand. You said, oh, the Web3 brand. What I would say, it's the Web3 meme.
It's
let's talk about that. Let's cook up some ideas. Let's get some journalists talking about that, and we'll sell some more newspapers. I'm
totally with you on that. Totally with you on that. But let's for the audience, let's start dissecting what this is. And I totally respect all opinions and perspectives of Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. So let's start the journey with Web 1. What is Web 1? What was happening there? We didn't reinvent the browser. Browsers, we're still using pretty much the same. I remember using Netscape, Internet Explorer, and then suddenly I was using Chrome for some reason. Still, it was Web 1, and then Web 2 came. Why Web 2? Is that still a sort of a branding scheme? No, there was clear functionalities of Web 2 that was not there in Web 1. Web 1 was read only. You could not interact with the HTTP protocol on Web 1. It was just read, and that's how information was distributed. And with Web 2, we saw, hey, you can click into this, you can create a profile, you can have, there was Facebook suddenly, there was Instagram slowly rolling out with Web 2 getting on the phones. So that we call Web 2. There were corporate networks where people could interact with a system that is built by companies, and slowly we saw that parts of the internet is actually owned by Facebook, and other parts of the internet is owned by Google. And hey, Google is making money with search. That was search wasn't even a thing in Web 1. So these are eras of web evolution. Web 3 is in lack of a easiest way to explain the Web3 for me is it's an internet of contracts. It's an internet where ownership is given back to the users. It's original idea of the invention of web, where internet, where people own this digital sort of real estate, and that's where Web3 is really powering this movement. People can own a like, let's say, for example, your community as an influencer. What makes an influencer is it's the influencer's community, he or she's community. And if you build a following on, let's say, X, or let's say Instagram, X owns your following. You are under the sort of, they control your community, and, you have to be on, follow their terms and give them a cut from your revenue, and they will take ownership of your community. And you will never be like, if you really truly own your following, you should be able to move your following to any protocol, any network that you want to. Now with Web3, you're going to be the owner of that. And same with various other solutions that this brings, especially, discussing smart contracts, which, I don't want to like kind of take it down on a rabbit hole, but the automation of execution of various contracts. These are the things
wait, sorry, Nandika.
Yeah.
Pause for a minute, because I hear you, and you're swimming in water. You're talking about, smart contracts, this and that, personal information, right?
Yeah.
I think some of the newer people, not me, of course, because I understand everything. I'm just kidding, right? But we have to, right? But I think we have to really bring people up slowly. But Martin, did you have a question or comment before we keep going?
Well, I'm thinking, where does the metaverse come into this? Is that a wrong question, maybe?
No, that's again, one of those digital real estate that you can create on this thing called Web3, or powered by Web3, where you can have, like, for example, one of the biggest things that was created on Metaverse, this concept of creating, this is my sort of web experience where you can go and interact with, I don't know, let's say a virtual reality, some kind of an experience that you created and designed. And okay, you did the work and you created this. Like, how do you power users coming in, interacting with it, revenue generation? These are things that Web3 or certain properties of Web3 will automate for you. This is what, quote unquote, smart contract. You're going to see a ton of smart contracts swimming around in Web3 that executing small functions, paying people out, collecting revenues, paying royalties, all these different things. A merchant where you don't even have to interact with your, processor. Automatically, you buy the goods, payments made, everybody's paid, commissions paid. It's just one single contract executing everything.
Okay, but I still think that's getting a little ahead of right. We had to bring people from writing on pads to then they were using a computer. Then they had Holly had her Novell, machine
Under my desk.
Then there was client server. Then there was the internet.
Well, I was gonna add that I kind of think, if you think about the evolution, I mean, I think Web3 is really about infrastructure, right, and process. And if we simplify it and boil it down to David's point, how do we boil this down for people who are not like deep in it, which I'm not deep in it, but I've been doing this for a long time. And when we look at it and we think about Web 1, right, we think about that was sort of like mainframe on the internet, right? In theory, right? Web 2 was client server on the internet. Where are we going? We're going with Web 3. If we boil it down, it really is about distribution and integrity of data and ownership of data, right? I mean, if we just simplify it, it's really about an infrastructure conversation. And it's about taking it from the infrastructure. You're right. Nobody says Web3, but there was a point in our lives when nobody said cloud. All of a sudden, Microsoft put out a commercial of these parents. I remember the day they put out a commercial. It was these two parents. I was selling cloud at IBM already to corporations. So cloud was not a big thing for me. I knew what it was. But all of a sudden the cloud became a big deal when Microsoft put out the commercial of the two parents stuck at the airport, and they were like, boom, let's put it in the cloud. And they made it a keyword, a term, but all it is it's infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
In the end, that's what it is. And when we boil it down, that's the way we need to understand it. And it's not going to be like, boom, all of a sudden Web3 is deployed. It's going to be people are thinking about how to use it, how to integrate it. I mean, I'd love to see the day when blockchain and AI come together for, LLMs, right? I mean, wouldn't that be cool if you actually could validate and have a what's the word I'm looking for? A chain of command for content, right? How we will get there, but it's an infrastructure that we're building out, and we're not there yet.
Right, but
100%.
Isn't it, Nandy, like infrastructure or operating system? Well, we went from DOS to Windows or Windows 3.0, really, right? And I think, and that's really the conversation exactly, Holly, that Nandika and I were having, where there's going to be a convergence of AI and blockchain, because how else are you going to manage all the rights of all the art and images and everything? So how do we help get WITI members ahead of the game? Sorry, go ahead, Nandika.
Yeah, you brought up a great point there with operating systems. With blockchain, the whole idea, in Web3 is interoperability. How can my system work seamlessly with yours? I can build wherever, however I want, whatever the code base I want, but I want to make sure that we work really well. Right now in the banking system, you see a lot of these kinks in different systems, legacy systems, not being able to work with each other. Wells Fargo has a different set of, their mainframes are using a different language. I'm not an expert in backend, but they have these various interoperability problems that causes a lot of expenses and fees. With Web3, you're not going to see that. So that's one of the other key areas that we are going to see a ton of savings, and it's going to be a deflationary experience for people to fully integrate this tech. So
right,
yeah,
no, that's right. Money, there's money attached to these things.
Money talks.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make an observation about Web 1 was this and blah blah blah. And along came the cloud. Quite actually, our agency invented the idea of the cloud. Okay, wasn't the term that we used, but we had a client that allowed you that had this product that allowed you to manage projects and manage building and all of this, building stuff like that. And all you needed was your laptop, a browser, and you could then share all of that information. And so in the interest of creating a category, we started talking about an idea called internet-based outsourcing, okay? They were the first company. So now all of a sudden, instead of, Bitcom is revolutionizing the construction industry, now it became they're the first companies that are doing internet-based outsourcing. It was a concept that was already in existence because people have been outsourcing forever, right? All we did was throw on the thing of internet. Then but PR agencies don't get to call things, that then become national memes, right? You work with other journalists and analysts, and then they gave it a name. And then it was just, distributed processing. And it was a couple of years. And somebody writes a new article, and now it's the cloud. That's something. Nothing has changed since internet-based outsourcing in 2000,
but you can even go back
in 2005.
But you can even go back and look at the mainframe, right?
Well, that's my point. It all started there. It all started there. So, it's things like memes and getting attached to certain ideas. that might be helpful conceptually, but at the end of the day, it's specific. It's people coming out with specific products and services that do something, okay, and they do it in a very different way. Bitcoin or Bitcom, which was this company, they were really the first company to say, "Hey, we got all the information up there, and it's in the cloud," which basically meant it was some.
It's a server, right? Server
It was
somewhere.
Centralized
server,
server
some
system.
kind of
Yeah.
server up there, and then the browser goes and gets the stuff.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it, and nothing has changed. That whole process has not changed a whole lot.
The word cloud is misleading.
Security issues, you know, refinements around the edge around security. So to me, it's more about what are the tools and the resources that people should be talking about, as opposed to getting hung up in a larger kind of amorphous conversation about it. So so if you put your Web3 hat on, Nandika, you look through those lenses, how is the world going to be different, and what kinds of things can be done that feel different?
Yes, certainly, Bill. The answer to this is in, again, UI, the user experience, or interfacing. We have that it's working, it's happening. There's been a ton of investments moving into this space. There are a lot of systems that are getting designed where you can interact with the blockchain without even knowing that you're interacting with the blockchain. That is the promised land. So when we were working on cloud, the only thing we had to do was, okay, before, as an accounting person, I had to download, I had to have a server to run my accounting system, or whatever the ERP system I used, enterprise resource planning. Like you installed QuickBooks in small businesses in the local computer. And then there came a day of an age, okay, well, there's social media stuff, but real stuff is, with the money, where the money moves, and keeping track of things. And then there an age that came, like, okay, still people install this software in their local servers or in their hard drive, and use the computer as a server to these systems. And also some people use it only on web. There's a cohort of people that use QuickBooks in this example. QuickBooks is an accounting software very commonly used by small businesses. Use QuickBooks only on web, and the others use QuickBooks on their local servers. And they are like, almost religiously like, no, I have to have my QuickBooks on my local server. There's nothing wrong with it. You're a little bit like sort of constrained. You're taking a little bit of risk, because, if something happens to your server, or your server goes down, or there's a fire in the server room, whatever the case may be, you may lose access to your stuff if you don't properly back it up. But with Google, you're completely, so that risk exposure is completely gone. And you might have the same experience or even better. Instead, now we can, now we can share this, many people can interface with your system because of this cloud hosting, environment. Transposing into Web3, we are going to go into we are in peer-to-peer territory. I am hosting part of it, you're hosting part of it, and maybe I can make a couple of bucks for hosting the environment.
I have an interesting recently, talking about this like risk exposure, right? But recently Microsoft just went down, and like half the world blacked out, and who's going to pay for that loss?
Failure, right? Talk about single point of failure.
Yeah. So to your point of that, like peer connected, like we are hosting instead of, because when we talk cloud, that's misleading. There is a server somewhere that is hosting that service. If that server goes down, now what happened with Microsoft was not a server issue, right? That was cybersecurity for release, and just the whole, but still so many people were affected, right? Yeah. So yeah, like, going, I think that is a intriguing and interesting conversation when you break it down to say what this technology does is that we become peer supported. It changes the whole dynamic of the global infrastructure of our communications, telecommunication 100%. Network infrastructure. That's huge. And we have some pretty big companies that are gonna resist for that change to be implemented.
How does
Because
that
there's a
compare
lot-
to the peer-to-peer structure that we used to have with, like, what was it? The music peer-to-peer stuff. And
Napster,
The
Napster.
LimeWire,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and
uTorrent,
all of that.
Pirate
Yeah,
Bay.
all of,
So okay, so everybody,
Right.
let's we're gonna stop the YouTube. So everybody watching on YouTube, thank you. Please put in the thread what you'd like to see in the future sessions, as we are now kind of restarting the WITI Web3 community.